Welcome back, everyone. Next, we have Appia Rare Earths and Uranium Corp. It trades on the CSE under the symbol API and on the OTCQX under the symbol APAAF. It's a publicly traded Canadian company in the rare earth element and uranium sectors. Please welcome its president, Stephen Burega. Welcome to the conference today, Stephen.
Thanks very much for having me. How are you doing today?
Great. We're happy to learn about your company. The floor is yours. Just call me back when you're ready for questions.
Sounds good. We'll certainly be looking at potentially forward-looking statements today, so I'll bring that attention to all your viewers. What I'm going to do over the next 20 minutes is give you a general overview on the company. I'm probably going to spend a little bit more time on the Brazilian story. It's something that we're very excited about and a project that we recently brought into the portfolio of assets. The company has been around since 2012, 2013, and we have four groupings of assets. So we have the PCH project, which is an ionic clay, absorption clay project down in Goiás, Brazil. It's the newest addition to the portfolio. We also have Elliot Lake, which is a hard rock monazite rare earth project in northern Saskatchewan. We have a uranium project in Ontario, which we recently announced a memorandum of understanding on that I'll take you briefly through, in Elliot Lake, Ontario. And we have four early stage uranium exploration projects in northern Saskatchewan, each of which I'll touch on briefly. Appia has been a company that's been focused on both uranium and rare earths now, as I mentioned, for over a decade. And our goal is, of course, especially when it comes to the rare earth side of things, to be focused on being part of the electrification and the sourcing of critical minerals, both for uranium as well as your rare earths. Recently, a recent announcement was on our PCH project. We announced the mineral resource estimate that we had accomplished in a very short period of time. I'll take you through some of those details as we move forward. And one of the focuses that we are focusing on right now is the idea of taking some of our uranium assets and potentially monetizing them in order to finance in a non-dilutive way the projects that we are focusing on, which would be the some of the rare earth projects, Brazil in particular. So we recently announced on May 15th a memorandum of understanding for our Elliot Lake project for a total value of $75 million and a 2% NSR. We're very excited by this, and we look forward to completing a definitive agreement on that project. As far as our capital structure is concerned, as you can see, 136 million shares outstanding. Insiders account for approximately 27% of the outstanding shares, fully diluted at 145 million. And cash on hand sits at around $1.5 million Canadian. No debt on the books. Our executive leadership team, of course, includes myself as president, our founder, Tom Drivas, CEO and director. He's been the mastermind behind developing these projects over the past decade. He's brought a tremendous portfolio of properties together, and adding into that our project in Brazil that we acquired just 1 year ago now, just under a year ago, and it's proven up to be something very extraordinary. We've recently brought in an additional VP of Exploration, Andre Costa, who's our VP of Exploration for the Brazil story. And Andre brings a significant level of experience, over 40 years of experience working in the Brazilian context, and specifically on rare earths as well, on rare earths and ionic clay mineralization structures. Antonio Vitor, who is our country manager and our vendor, our partner on the ground in Brazil. And we have three extraordinary individuals who lead our advisory committee. We have Konstantin Karyanopoulos, who has an extraordinary history, business acumen, and former CEO and CEO of Performance Materials, Neo Performance Materials. Of course, we have Don Haynes, who was our consulting geologist and is an industrial geologist who has worked on most rare earth ionic clay assets around the world. And then Jack Lifton, of course, has been with us for many years and goes without saying has an extraordinary following and knowledge base on these types of ionic clays, as well as just the rare earth industry writ large. I think we all understand the importance of the electrification and the move towards clean tech and green tech. One of the main focuses of the company is specifically around permanent magnets and the rare earths that are used within those permanent magnets. So we have four rare earths in mind primarily. These are NdPr, or neodymium praseodymium, terbium, and dysprosium. These are light and heavy rare earths, and they are a crucial component to permanent magnets. So those permanent magnets are used in EV motors, they're used in turbines, they're used in your cell phone, they're used across the board. These magnets are integral parts of these motors. And regardless of the power train that you're using, whether you're using a lithium battery or other source for power, these magnets are going to be a major portion and for the foreseeable future. And for us, we're very fortunate to be sitting on a project in Brazil as well as in northern Saskatchewan that has these vitally important rare earths, neodymium, praseodymium, terbium, and dysprosium. This slide gives you a bit of an understanding of location-wise of where we're operating. So as I mentioned, we're in northern Saskatchewan. This is in the Athabasca Basin. This is where we have the Elliot Lake project, where we've been operating now for a number of years. We've put close to $20 million plus into the ground as we track high-grade monazite. That's hard rock environment. Upwards of 80% pure monazite with 50% trio. That's total rare earth oxides. We also have 4 uranium exploration projects, in the area. And then we also have the Elliot Lake project in Elliot Lake, Ontario. And then, of course, Brazil, you've got Goiás, the state of Goiás, which is the capital state, and that's where our PCH project is located. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time now talking about the PCH project specifically. We're looking at over 40,000 hectares in total size. And we're looking at high-grade rare earth mineralization associated with these ionic clay structures, this ionic absorption clay. It's very important to understand the difference between a hard rock and a clay environment. We're looking at an easier production model, lower capex, lower opex. Essentially, you're looking at taking these ions off the outside of the molecule, as opposed to hard rock mining, which requires heating, crushing, processing, a significant number of additional steps in order to extract those rare earths. In the case of an ionic absorption clay structure, you're looking at a ammonium sulfate solution, modifying the pH levels in order to extract from the outside of those molecules those ions of rare earths that we're after. So from a processing perspective and overall cost perspective, it's a very exciting project because it is this ionic absorption clay mineralization. Now, what you're seeing here is all of the combined 22 claims. As I mentioned, 40,000 hectares of area. When we, March 1st, we put out our maiden mineral resource estimate. We worked with SGS Canada to produce that mineral resource estimate. We produced that on 2 target areas. One's called Target 4 and the other is called the Buriti target. As you can see from this map, it's a very small portion of our overall claim block, of our overall area. It's just shy of 500 hectares, 480 plus hectares. And it produced a very significant mineral resource estimate that I'll take you through momentarily. The project itself is an earn-in model. We have the right to acquire up to 70% of the PCH project. And we have an exceptional Brazilian team managing the project from, as I mentioned, Andre Costa, who's our VP of Exploration, through to junior geologists, down to our auger crews on the ground. This project operates on its own, away and separately from our project group that's operating in Canada, that's managing the Elliot Lake project, the Laringer, and other early-stage uranium exploration projects. So we did produce a mineral resource estimate as of March 1st, and the companion 43101 report was submitted 45 days later. The region is very exciting. Goiás is actually quite a prolific mining state. So when you look at this map, what you don't see is the fact that we are surrounded and inclusive of some very significant mining neighbors. So in the middle of this, for example, we have Teck Minco that are operating, that have a nickel operation or a nickel exploration project in the center area. East, west, north, and south, we have various well-known mining entities. This is a region where mining is part of the culture. We have support from the local farmers that have cattle grazing land. This is quite flat, favorable geography, forgive me. So we have the buy-ins from the farmers through to the municipalities, through to state, and eventually through up to the federal level. So as I mentioned, a mineral resource estimate highlights, we did produce this in a very, very quick fashion. We were able to produce in 8 months, we were able to drill 400 drill holes, RC and auger, compile our results, and produce a mineral resource estimate that comprises 6.6 million tons of material indicated at 2,513 ppm TREO. And we have additional 46 million plus tons of inferred resource at 2,888 ppm. This puts us in the upper echelon of our comparables, of the groups that are operating on these ionic absorption clay structures. We're in a very favorable position. We're in a great location that's mineable, that's homogeneous. You know, the idea of an area where it's flat terrain, that the grade is continuous and homogeneous from east to west, north to south, presents a very opportune environment for potential mining. So we have high grade, both in the light as well as heavy rare earths, and I'm gonna touch on that a little bit more over the next few slides. So this is again a summary of the breakdown of the mineral resource estimate, and of highlight. We do have certain areas that are extremely high grade. So you will see in the second line here under inferred of target 4, 13 million tons with an average grade of 7,300 ppm. This is a very high grade area. And what it's led to us is to realize that there are different styles of mineralization on the property. So not only do we have an extensive area of this ionic absorption clay material, that's actually weathered material over top of the Ipora granite. So this is a granite that's weathered over millions of millennia, and it has the right composition to then form this ionic clay layer. We're talking from surface down to average about 13, 14 meters. The deepest material, or the deepest holes, went down to about 24 meters, and then we ended those holes in the water table when we hit the water at certain cases. So we haven't completely tested the depth, but this is all adding to the mineability of the project area. So from surface down, mineralization is consistent. And some of this material is ionic, and we also realize that some of it is more of a carbonatic nature. So in the case of target 4, we have both. In some of this cases, the high grade material, when we're sitting and seeing average some grades reaching to 9%, that is probably due to some primary mineralization included within the ionic absorption clay material. So the key for us, the completion of the circle, so to speak, to understand that we in fact were looking at an ionic absorption clay mineralization, you need to be able to recover those materials. You need to be able to show that they're desorbable. And by desorbable, we're talking about an adsorption material, and to desorb it, it means to remove those ions off of the outside of those molecules. We've now been able to complete the initial testing, and it shows that all of the characteristics that you would expect to see in an ionic absorption clay material are present in the PCH project. And you can go to our website and see the results of all of the desorption testing completed to date, and the ongoing. There's quite a bit of ongoing work that will be continued. But the key was we show that we have the ionic absorption clay material and that we are seeing good recoveries. And don't forget, this is off-the-shelf testing. We haven't had the opportunity to really modify the pH levels and be able to tweak those tests in order to see exactly how high and what level of desorbability or recoverability that we'll see. This is just a map that outlines target 4. This is the north target, and the distribution of some of the higher recovery areas. Again, all this material will be available, and rather than focusing on detailed maps like this, I wanted to talk specifically about what we're doing next in the next phase of our exploration. So we've had an auger team ongoing drilling, testing new targets, and as I mentioned earlier, we have these iporous granites that cover a very significant portion of our overall claim block. So 40,000 hectares, 22 claim blocks, and we are sitting on just near 80% of the total claim blocks have those iporous granites underlain. That's an extremely important component to this story. So we have the opportunity to expand, not just from our initial maiden resource of some 52 million tons. We know that we've been able to identify additional targets, and we will be able to expand that resource estimate quite significantly. So over the last few weeks, we've announced the identification of 4 new target areas. That's the Merope and Taygeta, as well as the Maya and Electra targets. All told, this is bringing some 2,400 additional hectares of similar mineralization that we've seen at target 4 in those ionic absorption clay materials. We're seeing now an addition of 2,400 hectares. What does that mean? The initial mineral resource estimate was produced on just under 500 hectares. So 52 million tons on 482 hectares to be exact. And now we've identified additional material of up to over 2,400 hectares of additional material. Now, we haven't completed all the drilling. We have desorption testing to continue with, but this initial auger, auger tests that we have seen have produced some extremely exciting results. The key here is that we're after those heavy rare earths, as I mentioned before. And as you can see from this strip log, we're seeing very specific ranges of heavy rare earths and additional light rare earth mineralization at depth. So it's 0 is ground level, and then we're going down meter by meter as you look through this strip log. Good levels of terbium and dysprosium, very good levels of neodymium and praseodymium. The total rare earth oxide numbers are extremely positive, and this is seen across the board. So we're excited. There's lots of work to continue doing, and we'll be producing and releasing results as soon as they're available to further discussions on these 4 new target areas. So what have we done so far this year? As I mentioned, over 400 auger and RC drill holes, all done for approximately $1 million. We've produced a mineral resource estimate, our maiden mineral resource estimate. We've drilled approximately 400 auger and RC holes. We've produced 52 million ton MRE. We've established that we are in fact looking at an ionic clay absorption clay structure. We've done all this in breakneck speeds, and we're going to continue to move quickly, because the beautiful thing about Brazil is not only are we well accepted by the farmers, the community, the landowners, the municipalities, the state, we can also work almost year round. So we have the opportunity to really speed forward as we develop and extend the mineral resource estimate across extension zones around target 4 in the Buriti zone, and then to bring in additional material as we further delineate these new 4 target areas. So we're in great position in Brazil. It's very exciting, and we will now continue with this work as we further develop those 4 new targets and build on the great work that's been accomplished by the team so far. A quick snapshot on some of the Canadian assets, because I don't want to lead anyone to believe that we're not active in Canada. We are still very active in Canada. Specifically, let's talk about the Elsie's Lake project. This is an area that we've been focused on now for the better part of 10 years. It's a world-class asset. We're finding surface showings of up to 80% monazite, hard rock monazite, with some close to 50% trio numbers. These are extraordinarily high-grade material. Now, what we have found in abundance is also low, medium grade, deep, thick intervals of that type of material across the property. So we've been tracking a structural corridor from the core area, which is called the WRCB zone, and we've been tracking that southeast along the eastern extent of the property. Within that structural corridor, we anticipate finding multiple new targets for us to be able to drill test and bring forward and develop as we move towards a mineral resource estimate on the Elsie's Lake project as well. I think it's also important to point out that a made in Saskatchewan option is something that's certainly sought after by the SRC. The Saskatchewan Research Council has developed a separation facility in Saskatoon that's specifically geared towards monazite. So as we move towards our mineral resource estimate over the coming years, as we develop that understanding of the potential for mineability at Elsie's Lake, we have a great relationship ongoing with SRC, and we think that this is something that we'll be able to build further out as we move forward in the future. This summer, we're also working on some of our uranium projects, and I think it's very important to point out that we haven't lost track of our uranium projects. As I mentioned, we have announced recently, just a few weeks ago, this memorandum of understanding on our Elliot Lake project. But we're also working towards developing some exploration programs both on the Loranger project, where we anticipate potentially drilling. We had announced in the wintertime the idea of doing some drill holes on Loranger in the winter. Unfortunately, the winter road didn't open this year, so it really hampered our logistics and ability to operate. That's being revisited now. And we're also looking at some ground exploration work that we might be able to complete and continue on the other project areas, specifically with Eastside in mind. So Eastside, you can see here on the eastern side of this map, as well as Loranger, which runs down the center. These are projects that have been within the company for some time, and we're really excited to expand our understanding and knowledge on through drilling and ground truthing exploration programs. As I mentioned previously, Elliot Lake is a project that we've had with the company since its inception. Elliot Lake has a historic resource of non-compliant historic resource of 199 million pounds of uranium in situ. In 2013, 2014, we brought 55 million pounds of that resource estimate up to modern day and compliant NI 43-101 standards. We spent about $10 million on the project. This was always a project that we knew had tremendous value. And now with the rise in the uranium price, we were able to establish a great company favored project MOU and details to move towards a definitive agreement that will allow the company in a non-dilutive way to put some significant amounts of funding into the company that can then be earmarked for other projects as we move forward. So, as I mentioned, $75 million, with $25 million on initial payment due at the end of October, and then an additional $50 million due with a bankable feasibility. It's a great opportunity for the company and our shareholders, and we have excellent partners to move the project forward, and we're really excited by the potential. So I think in closing, in summary, Appia is one of the very few companies in the world on the rare earth side that has both exceptional hard rock as well as ionic absorption clay projects in their portfolio. We plan on leveraging both of these to develop a great story for our shareholders as we move forward in developing the understanding in Brazil. And that's happening very quickly. But we're not losing track on the excitement that we have with regards to Elliot Lake, as well as moving our projects forward on the uranium side. So with that in mind, I think I've gone through this presentation as quickly as I can in order to make sure that I open up the floor for questions. There's lots of opportunity here, so I think let's see what questions you have. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yes, thank you so much, Stephen. We do have lots of questions for you. Let's see how many we can get in our time. A viewer asks, when you talk about an earn-in model, who is in control of them now, and what is required to earn in? Is it progress or exploration?
So earn-in models take different forms, of course. So our Brazilian story, the Brazilian project, the PCH project, has an earn-in model of a total of $10 million over 5 years, with specific milestones of dollars in the ground, issuance of some shares. But at the end of the day, the model is set up so that the dollars are spent on the project. And I think we have an exceptionally a great partner on the ground who wanted to see the development of the project rather than cash up front. It was a nice negotiation, a friendly negotiation, and in that particular case, it's milestone based. In the case of our earn-in model and proposed MOU with Elliot Lake, there's cash components. And then there's work that needs to be done. They need to get this one of the project areas up to a bankable feasibility study. So not only is there $75 million of cash componentry, there's also a lot of work that needs to be accomplished on that project. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Thank you. Talk about what studies have been released with regard or indicated with your any proven reserves on your properties.
So as I mentioned previously, and I can flip back to that slide, there is actually a mineral resource estimate at Elliot Lake, as I mentioned, 55 million pounds of in situ uranium and 180 million pounds of rare earths. That's a mineral resource estimate that was completed previously. And then as I mentioned on the PCH project, we moved very quickly towards a mineral resource estimate. In less than 9 months, we had produced our maiden mineral resource estimate at PCH. So there's NI 43-101 reports, companion reports to go with these resource estimates on both cases.
And so the rare earths required for magnets you mentioned, are they a higher quality or grade than their standard counterparts?
So I think what's important to acknowledge is that there's a very different approach when you're looking at hard rock versus an IAC or an ionic absorption clay. What might be seen as low grade in a clay environment versus a higher grade in a hard rock environment has to be balanced off with the cost, the CapEx, OpEx costs associated to extracting those rare earths. So it's from an ionic absorption clay perspective, we have very good grades. We have very high grades relative to other ionic absorption clay in mineralization structures around the world. But you don't want to make the mistake of trying to compare what we have in particular to a hard rock environment. However, in some cases we do have very high grade material at target 4. And 94,000 ppm equates to 9% trio. So some of these intercepts are extremely high grade. Everything would qualify as high grade in comparison to, for example, the operating entity in Brazil that's producing a concentrate currently is an organization called Serra Verde. Their average grade is quite a bit lower than ours. Some of our contemporaries within the Brazilian context or environment have, I think we fare quite well against. If you look at some of these ionic absorption clays from our understanding of the Chinese context, we are extremely high grade in comparison to what they have been looking at over the past 30 or 40 years. And with that in mind, I think it's also important to point out, that Chinese do control a majority of the production, the separation, the processing, and the mining of these rare earths currently in these worldwide. The PCH project has the potential of, and I think Brazil as a whole has the potential of quite honestly being a disruptor to that stranglehold. I think Brazil has the right approach. They're open for business. They're showing that they can be a mineable jurisdiction, and quite honestly, they have the right mineralogy and mineralization. And there are very few places in the world where true ionic absorption clay projects can be situated. You have to have a perfect storm. You have to have the right granites. You have to have the right weathering profile, and the mineralogy has to be correct to start with. So it's an exciting place to be at the forefront as Brazil quickly becomes, I think, is going to quickly become a world leader in critical minerals, specifically in the rare earth sector.
Yes, we've heard a lot about China today. It's a good plan. We have a question about providing feedstock to SRC plant. Will you be doing that? Can you give us a timeline for this?
We don't have a formal arrangement in place. I know that they're anxious that we move forward. I don't think that we have a very strong relationship, positive relationship with them. They do all of our testing. They're well aware of the Elliot Lake project. We need to move forward to a mineral resource estimate and some additional work on potential beneficiation on site to see if we can not only take advantage of that high-grade material that we've found, which is extremely exciting, but also can we see some beneficiation that can take place on that low-medium grade material that could then augment those percentages up as a feedstock that could then be shipped down to SRC. So I think it's quite premature for us to put a timeline to it. I think it's fair to say, though, that we are always having a very positive conversation and an ongoing conversation with them.
And how has the market responded to all this news flow that your company's released over the past months?
Not as well as we would have hoped. Needless to say, the marketplace in Canada has it's been a tough environment. I think we've put out extraordinary news over the last 9-10 months. And of course, there's been a few uncontrollable circumstances that we faced as far back as September of last year. But the reality is that we're a very liquid company. I mean, we've traded 80 million shares over that time span, and we continue to have good buying support. And I think that at the end of the day, the news is going to speak for itself. We've always agreed that we were going to be very transparent in the way in which we approach telling our story, especially in Brazil and across all of our projects. Full disclosure of all results. And I think that professionalism is going to come through. And at the end of the day, I do believe that the market is just learning about us still. I mean, what we have accomplished in such a short period of time could typically take 3, even 4 years of exploration in other contexts. So I think that we've hit the market very quickly, and I do believe that the traction is forthcoming.
Now, in order to move projects forward, who would be an ideal partner for you?
Well, the list is from a processor's perspective, from a separator's perspective. There aren't many. For an offtake, you've got a Linus or a Mountain Pass or an Energy Fuels. Of course, that's a possibility. I think that the potential of ongoing conversations with larger funds that are looking to come down closer to the mine site with potential funding is very real. Of course, we're all aware of the DoD LOIs that have been happening, that have been announced over recent weeks and months. Suffice it to say that we have ongoing conversations on a regular basis with great potentials, And I think that it's really comes down to the right opportunity for the project when management thinks that it's time to pull the trigger. PCH as a potential project has huge I think it's probably the most exciting project I certainly have worked on in my 20-year career in this business. And we want to make sure that we do it right, and we put our best foot forward for our shareholders. So potential partners are many. At the end of the day, a non-Chinese controlled asset project like ours, I think, is going to be in hot demand. So I'm really excited by our prospects over the coming months and this upcoming year, especially given the fact that we've now clearly confirmed that we've got an ionic absorption clay structure, and we can show that this potential mineralization is abundant across the 40,000 hectares. I mean, that's really exciting, and people are really starting to pay attention.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on the conference today. Wonderful getting to know you and your company, and we would definitely welcome you back in the future, giving us some more updates.
Thank you so much for the time today, and thank you to all the viewers out there.
All right, everyone, stay with us. We will be back with Challenger Gold at 3:30 Eastern. We'll be back soon.